Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the JJ Talks NFL podcast. I am your host, Jonah Carden, and I am, once again, have a good friend, Jesse. He is back on the pod for what feels like the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th time now. But it's always a fun time. So, Jesse, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I feel like we must have hit double digits between like both our podcasts.
Gotta be.
Kind of feels like it, right? I mean, I've been doing this for like 2 years about, and I think you guys have been doing similar. So I feel like it's got to be that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in June it'll be 2 years of this podcast going on, and I feel like the first month we started, we started talking to you. So you've been along for the ride as long as we have. So.
Mm-hmm. Hell yeah, I'm excited. Very excited.
Yeah, so today we've got a bit of a Jaguars review. Going to talk a lot about the Jags, and definitely Jesse knows a lot more than I do. So I've got some good stuff to talk about. I'm ready to listen in on what he's got to say. So first off, the 2020 season's obviously over. We've got the Rams as the Super Bowl champs. So I guess my first thought before we even talk Jags is, what were your thoughts on the Super Bowl?
Yeah, it was a pretty good Super Bowl, honestly. I thought it was fun, which is kind of what I'm looking for in a Super Bowl now because my team is so far out of it. I don't really care about the playoffs.
Same.
Yeah, true. So I just kind of, it was a good one. Probably the best one the past two haven't been great. I don't remember the third one offhand before that, but it's definitely been the best over the past like 3 or 4 years. So I'm happy with it. The Rams were my preseason to make the Super Bowl. I had a bet that I won a good amount of money. Yeah, yep. So I was happy about that. The Chiefs were my other one, and they got really close. I feel like I'm gonna bet the Chiefs every year to just make the Super Bowl because they're just the odds are never going to be like too high ever because like you can't just do that because you got to like play the field a little bit. Like they're like minus whatever, like or just you know what I mean. They can't be too high. Yeah. So yeah, I just feel like their odds are like pretty good because they just have a really good chance of making it, and I feel good about it. So, it was a good Super Bowl though. To answer your question.
Yeah, the Rams were also my preseason pick to be able to win it all. I thought they'd had a very, very good shot. I liked what they were able to do when they brought in Stafford. I believe the team I had them going against was the Ravens, which originally I felt good about, and then their entire team had to go to the hospital. Yeah. So that didn't really work out. But yeah, it was good, and I think my favorite Super Bowl since probably the Philadelphia Patriots one, where it felt like another team had a defense. Just because it was super high scoring, that was fun. Nick Foles.
I don't talk about 2017 though.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
So that never happened.
2016 for me, so I completely understand.
Yeah. True.
But yeah, so that's the Super Bowl. So I guess my first question is just in general. We're gonna go into some specifics, but as a general sense, your thoughts on the Jaguars 2021 season?
Yeah, it was super fucking disappointed. I can curse on this podcast. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So,
that's fine. You're good.
Yeah, fuck that season. What a terrible season. Urban Meyer was a terrible coach. Everyone called it out. And they finally played Cisco, who was really Andre Cisco, their 3rd-round draft pick. They finally played him when Urban left, and I was really happy about his performance. The team looked so much better, just out of the hands of Urban. And this year was just a wash. I mean, at least Trevor played the entire time. So I'm happy that he got that experience, but. It wasn't the offensive line's fault that the offense was bad. It was the receiver's fault. So I just, it was, and the defense, obviously. The defense is I don't want to say total garbage, because I think there are like 3 or 4, maybe even 5 good guys on this defense still. And that's not, 12 players, right? I don't think it's too bad there. But there's a lot wrong with this team, and it was... I'm just gonna say it was a disappointing year, even though I knew this year wasn't gonna be bad. I knew that wasn't gonna be good. I knew it was gonna be bad, but I didn't think it'd be Urban Meyer feeling up a college girl when I've had sex in like 2 years to make me feel bad, and then also my Jaguars losing. So it was bad. It was a bad year. So
yeah, I remember when y'all hired Urban Meyer in the first place, and I was like, I don't have a good feeling about that. Mister, I'm going to pretend to have a heart attack and a heart condition to retire and just move to a different school. And, it was one of those, I was like, I mean, maybe, but, college coaches moving on to the NFL level, we haven't seen an extremely large amount of success. Now there are some exceptions. You got Pete Carroll, who obviously did fairly well. Jim Harbaugh did fairly well before he moved back to Michigan, but we've also seen guys like, I think Cliff Kingsbury, he just got an extension, but I think the jury's still out on him. Nick Saban obviously didn't really work out, and now Urban Meyer's kind of added to that list. So I don't know. I didn't feel super big about him in the first place. But, yeah, it didn't seem like he was a good fit at all as not just as a coach, but really as a leader for that team. And you got the kicker thing too that happened.
Dude,
and
so many stories come out of that. Yeah,
benching James Robinson, which made no sense. And
I do want to actually, now there's some specific stuff I do want to bring up. We could have signed Dan Arnold in the offseason, didn't. Then we traded away Josh Oliver for like nothing, who was a tight end we drafted like 2 years ago, and then we traded for Arnold. And we drafted Travis Etienne, which seemed to be an Urban Meyer pick, which was the dumbest pick ever. Because we have Etienne, we got Laquan Treadwell, we got Jamal Agnew, we got Laviska Shenault, and Urban wanted all these guys, and they all do the same fucking thing. It's just, it was really dumb roster construction. I feel like Urban had a huge hand in that, and I'm giving Bulky a lot of passes here, which as we go into it, you'll see that I'm not a Bulky hater. So, sorry, I just wanted to add that stuff in there because it just really pisses me off, and I have to remember,
Yeah. So, I guess the one thing that Urban Meyer didn't exactly do wrong that I guess most people had projected were going to happen anyways was Trevor Lawrence was going to get taken number 1. So, a lot of people were kind of hailing him as this, the next Andrew Luck, this big-time prospect coming in. And I think he's still got a ton of potential. I think the best is definitely ahead of him. And I definitely think that he showed some good and showed some bad. But that's just me on the outside. What were your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence in his first year?
He's going to be a star. I don't really care about this first year. I'm happy he got all the playing time. I'm very happy about that. Mm-hmm. It's great. He's going to be a star. If you watched the Colts game, last game of the year, you saw what he can do. He's shown flashes all the time. The first 5 games when we had DJ Chark, the offense looked pretty decent, and he looked pretty good. It was his first 5 games, too, and he was looking pretty impressive. So I was very happy about that. Once Chark was gone, it took the offense just took a huge nosedive. We had no one to stretch the field in a meaningful way. Like Laquan Treadwell, I guess could. Jamal Agnew, I guess kind of could, but they had to pull a lot of weight in other areas because Laviska was not as good, and Marvin Jones, I think, is overrated. Not that he's bad, but excuse me, I think people think he's above it. Excuse me. I think people think he's above average, but he's probably just average to maybe even below average. So, but I know I really Trevor's going to be a star. If you have any doubts, just watch the Indianapolis game. I don't think there are many quarterbacks can do what he did to a defense that was top 5, at least, or top 10, maybe even considered by most people. So, I think that's all you really need to see. And all I need to see was a few flashes. I mean, he had a bunch of flashes. If people are still high on Justin Fields, they have to be super, super high on Trevor Lawrence. So, I'm excited.
Yeah, and I think hopefully going forward, this new regime under Doug Peterson, who we're going to talk in a bit, is going to be able to kind of help him out a bit, because I think a lot of people are expecting them probably to go offensive line, whether it's in free agency or the draft, to help that out. And then hopefully his receivers can be healthy, because that's been kind of an issue. And then, Marvin Jones, who I like Marvin Jones, but he's also 32 at this point, and he's kind of he can do one thing, and he can do it fairly well. He's a pretty decent red zone threat, and he can make big plays occasionally, but he also disappears. And Marvin Jones should not be your best option by any means. He should be your third option on a team probably, and he kind of became number 1 for Trevor Lawrence or bust. So outside of James Robinson, of course. But I think going forward, as long as they put some talent around him, I think he's going to be fine. I mean, I definitely think this is as bad as Trevor Lawrence is going to look, and it was his rookie season. And it's one of those things going forward that usually you want to take out your worst season, take out your rookie season, and take out your best season. You kind of see who you really are. So I agree. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be fine, and I'm kind of, looking forward to seeing what he can do going forward.
Yeah, I mean, look, people were doubting Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow had a better year before he got hurt anyway, but people were doubting Joe Burrow, who was the generational prospect before Trevor Lawrence, literally the year before. I don't know why people say that all the time. Best prospects in Andrew Luck 2 years in a row. But people were super low compared to where he is right now, and they're going to do the same thing to Trevor Lawrence. It's going to happen. You can call the Jaguars a poverty franchise, just like you called Cincinnati last year. They made the Super Bowl, so suck my dick, whatever, you're just wrong, so.
Yeah, and heck, I'm just happy Trevor Lawrence stayed healthy. I mean,
true.
There were times where I see him get hit, and I'm like, oh man, he's just a one trick away from absolutely getting destroyed. But the fact that he was able to
big dude.
He is. He's a big guy, and he's got everything that you want in a quarterback. I mean, he's got he's got the intelligence, he's got the arm, he's got the mobility, he's got the size and everything. So yeah, I mean, not only does he have all the measurables, but I mean, I think he, like you said, he showed some good things. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we can do going forward, especially with his new coach, who I know you were extremely high on them hiring. So your thoughts on Doug Peterson being y'all's new head coach?
Yeah, I mean, he was my number 1 choice, by far. And I mean, I think I've said this a billion times on your podcast. I've said it a billion times on my podcast. It's so hard to tell, what coaches are actually good or not, because there's so much that we don't know that goes on behind the scenes. So it's always really tough to tell. But yeah, Peterson's a Super Bowl winning coach. I love pretty much everything he did in Philly. Even him sitting Carson Wentz and then starting Hurts and then sitting Hurts or doing all that whatever stuff. I thought that was a great move. I thought that was great coaching. Like, do what you can to make your team better, and your team wasn't going anywhere. Lose the fucking game, get a better draft pick, be better next year. Like, I love everything he's doing. He was praising the signing of Tyler Shatley, who he signed for a 2-year extension. He really wants to bring back DJ Chark. Apparently said that on a radio show. So he was my number one choice by far. People were all coming over Leftwich because everyone loves nostalgia. And they're just like, oh, God, he was part of the team, and look what he did with Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, fucking Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette. These are star players. Like, I'm not gonna give up my entire franchise to someone who literally has the best option and one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. I don't care about Byron Leftwich being the offensive coordinator when he has such talent there that, like, a monkey could do his job. So I don't know. I was very happy with Peterson, what he did with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I just wanted a really established coach. Like, I was a fan of Caldwell too. Coming in, I thought he would have been good too. And I don't hate the staff that he has. People hate like Pep Taylor or whatever the fuck, but I don't really care. I think we've got a good squad here, and I'm excited to see what we got going forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, I thought the DJ Chark wanting to bring him back was an interesting thing when I saw it. Not that I think it's a bad move. I think it's actually a really good move, and I honestly think that Chark still has a ton of untapped potential in him, and I think the issues have been him being able to stay healthy. But you even mentioned before, Trevor Lawrence, when DJ Chark was available, was good. I mean, he really was a big-time target for him. And with Doug Peterson coming in, and this might sound an alarm for some people, but I don't mean it to, and if you know back, especially during the Super Bowl run, I think DJ Chark could be a kind of like a Nelson Aguilar type of guy in Doug Peterson's offense, which in those years with Doug Peterson there, Nelson Aguilar was good. Now, he had a trouble with drops, and I don't think DJ Chark's going to have that issue. But in terms of how he's used as a deep threat and inline type of thing, I think that could work out very well for DJ Chark. And I don't know who their like Alshon Jeffrey type of guy is going to be. We'll have to see. And I'm also kind of interested to see if they try to bring in a tight end. And, I mean, he's not even a free agent yet. But if he does end up becoming one due to being cut, I think Austin Hooper would be an interesting addition for you guys as kind of the Ertz type of dude that maybe Doug Peterson wants, kind of replicating what he was able to do with Philadelphia. I think there are pieces there, and I think Doug Peterson's the mind that's going to be able to get a lot out of Trevor Lawrence. I mean, heck, he won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. I'd love to see what he could do with a guy like Trevor Lawrence. So, yeah, I liked it. I think if there's ever a team that needs this type of coach, I think it's Doug Peterson. I think a guy that's a veteran guy, a Super Bowl winning coach, this franchise needs it. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned on a podcast I was on yesterday, talking about going forward with the Falcons, it's like I don't expect to, make the playoffs next year. That's not my expectation. I'm not expecting to win a Super Bowl in 2 years, but I need to see improvement from the young guys. I need to see some potential, and I honestly think Doug Peterson can provide that for y'all. Yeah,
I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I'm not super strong on like coaching stuff too, because like I said, I don't know all the stuff that goes behind the scenes. But like you mentioned before, dude, he like won a Super Bowl with Carson Wentz and Nick Foles, and we saw what Nick Foles did on the Jaguars. We see what Carson Wentz has done on the Colts, and I know these are after a bunch of injuries, and I know he had an insane year. Wentz did, and I don't think that was all Peterson's credit. But I mean, yeah, I don't think he's ever had anyone with the potential that Trevor Lawrence has. So yeah, exciting for sure.
Before we continue, I want to apologize if people see my camera shaking. I have a cat that's running around here and trying to jump on my desk. So, yeah, she's a cute little thing, but she is frustrating. I don't know where she is. I think she's behind me. Yep, there she is.
That's cats for you, right?
It is. And, I love her to death, but oof. Yeah. All right, so there's Doug Peterson, there's Trevor Lawrence, but what about the rest of the rookie class? You got guys, I think, Tyson Campbell, I believe, in the second round. You mentioned Cisco. So what are your thoughts on how that class did in general?
Yeah, I have grades, but I don't know if I'm going to pull them up because I think my grades have changed a little bit. But, the Travis Etienne pick was a total waste. What a terrible, terrible fucking pick. I was so mad. There's so many other players that I wanted there. And taking a running back when we already have a running back on a roster that is pretty thin talent-wise was just a huge mistake. I
remember being live with Josh, and we saw that, and we were just like, what? You're like, this, I had to get up out of my chair, I think, because I was just like, whoa, okay, because everything up to that point, I was like, okay, and I was even nailing some picks because I had picked Trey Lawrence at 3. I saw the Jets move up, and I was like, I think Vera Tucker's a great pick here. That landed, and then y'all took ETN, and I was just like, whoa, wait, hold on, explain that one to me, Coach, because I don't get that.
Well, I think the logic was that because I also heard rumors that they want to take Kadarius Toney in that spot, but he was taken by the Giants, a few picks ahead or whatever. I think the logic was just like to use. I think they want to use ETN, or at least they did want to use him as like not really a running back, as like a slot guy, and which is dumb though because like I said before, Laquan Treadwell, Jamal Agnew, Laviska Shenault. Like I just there's no reason. We already have at least a lot of potential there. So it just makes no sense to do. But outside of the ETN pick, Lawrence is obviously the easy one. Tyson Campbell, I was not really a fan of. I really thought we should have taken, and I still stand by this 1,000%. We should have taken Asante Samuel Jr. He was the obvious pick for me there. He was my number 4 cornerback. And I know there was like the big 3 cornerbacks with like J.C. Horn and whatever the other guys, I forget, whatever. But like, and he was my 4. He was close to that tier for me. But Tyson Campbell, to be fair, did show a lot of stuff, especially towards the end of the year. I thought he got better. I thought he played pretty good. And matching him and Shaquille Griffin going forward, I'm not as uncomfortable as I was coming into that year. So happy about that pick. The Walker Little pick was good. I was skeptical as well with this one, but I mean, it was just the injuries for him. And I am all for taking guys who fall in the draft because of injury or because of an off-field issue. I don't care. I'll take the risk. Even in the second round, I'll take the risk. Absolutely. For a talent like I think Walker Little could be for this team, and whenever he got on the field, and it was after Urban Meyer left when he really got on the field, he was very good for us. And we're going to need tackles. I think Cam is likely gone because I think the Jaguars probably bring in an edge rusher. And actually, it really depends on free agency, but we can talk about that in a bit. Should I keep going, or did you want to interject anything? Or
No. Yeah. Well, the only thing with Tyson Campbell is I was kind of surprised on that one because when he was at Georgia, he wasn't awful, but he wasn't a big like interception guy, and he, I kind of felt like Eric Stokes was kind of the main one, a part of them too. So I was like, I don't know, but he actually did fairly well. And yeah, I mean, really looking at them, the only, like you mentioned, it was just Travis Etienne that was the questionable one to me. Outside of that, I made sense. And Walker Little was a guy that I loved. I mean, I remember early on, his freshman year when he was at Stanford, people were saying he could end up being like a top 10 tackle. But again, he just kept dropping because of the injury issues. But he was just good. Anytime he was on the field, he was good. It was just the issue of being on the field. So it was one of those. I was like, okay, whatever team gets Walker Little is going to get a guy with a ton of upside. And I think, honestly, he's a guy that Pro Bowl caliber right tackle is honestly what I think like Walker Little could be. At very minimum, I think he could be just a steady right tackle presence.
Yeah, I was happy with that pick. I was pretty happy with that pick. My second favorite pick though was the Andre Cisco pick, and I touched on that a little bit earlier. But he was the first pick in the 3rd round. I thought this was a really, really good safety class, and I still think it is. And Cisco is, I think it was like my 4, maybe 5, or maybe even 3. He reminds me, and I'm making this comp. I'm not saying he's going to be this player, but he reminds me of like the ball hawking safeties of like the Troy Polamalu. Not as big hitting guy, but just like the rangy safeties like Polamalu and Ed Reed. That's just who I like. I'm not saying he's anywhere near going to be as good as that or anything like that. I'm not saying that.
Right.
I'm just saying he's a very rangy safety who I think intercepts the ball a lot. Not as big hitting as these guys like Brian Dawkins or anything like that, but I think he's a very rangy dude who's going to play great center field for this team. And I think, honestly, I'm just really happy that Doug Peterson is going to get to use him in his defense because I think he was wasted. And he barely even played when we were like a horrible team that was running out with Sean Jenkins and Andrew Wiggins. And we know what Andrew Wiggins is. He has a capped upside. And Jenkins was the worst all-season signing they had, for sure. Cisco just needs to play. He needs to play next year. He needs to play forever. He's going to be a safety mainstay for this team for a long time, and I was very happy with the pick. And then the rest of them, I liked Tafule, Jake Tafule, and Jordan Smith. They didn't really see the field that much this year, but I do like them a lot as like flyers in the 4th round. And I don't care about the other 2. Jalen Camp. I don't think Jalen Camp even made the team. Or Luke Farrell is another tight end that we wasted our time on, but that's okay. But yeah, I think this was overall a pretty good draft, a pretty good haul outside of ETN. So, yeah.
I love Cisco, too. I believe he was my 4th. I think I had him below Holland. But he was my 4th rated safety. I had Grant as my 2. And so when Atlanta took Grant, I was I still love Grant. I know he didn't have the greatest year in Atlanta, but I still think he's going to be great. But yeah, I saw Cisco, and it was one of those like, okay, if you don't take, because then thinking in the Falcons' point of view, I was like, okay, if you don't take safety at the second round, give me Cisco in the third, because like Cisco is just I love Cisco. So when I saw the Jags take him, I was like, oh, that's such a good pick. That's such a good pick for that secondary, and I think as really all those ones outside of ETN, but we'll see what Doug Peterson decides to use them. But all those picks, I think there's going to be high value ones, some good young guys to add in, and I think y'all have a very good shot of, next year, this upcoming draft, being able to get some. But we'll talk a little bit about that in a bit. But before that, you mentioned free agency, and the Jags have quite a bit of cap space right now, and I decided to look at their contract situation, and they don't really have. I think they only have 2 guys that have a double-digit cap hit this season. I believe it's Shaquille Griffin and Miles Jack. So you have a ton of money. So what would you like to see them do? Do you want to see them make a big splash? Do you want to see kind of go mid-level with several guys? Do you want to see them save going forward? What do you want to see?
Yeah, last year I think was, like you said, the mid-level guys that we didn't give like huge contracts out to. I think the biggest ones were, like I said, it was Shaquille Griffin and Rashawn Jenkins, which was Rashawn Jenkins was a terrible one. It was the longest deal, so I think it was a 4-year deal. I think it was a little front loaded too. We can get out of it next year without being too much of a hit, but terrible fucking signing. But yeah, I think I'm giving Balky a lot of credit here, and I'm doing a lot of, speculation for sure. But it's like I thought, because we knew we weren't going to win this year, there was no way we were going to be good this year. So I thought it was a good idea to bring in a bunch of free agents on pretty okay contracts, which is what Balky did, and then see which guys we can fit in and do whatever. And then after Trevor Lawrence has a year under his belt, a year in the NFL, then we spend big this free agency and try and make a push for the next 2 or 3 years while we have a quarterback on a rookie deal. So as long we need to spend big this year. That's what I'm saying. We need to spend huge this year, and I think there are some good guys that should be out there. Hopefully, depending on whatever happens. But I think that this has to be I think Balky has a master plan. I hope, or at least this would be my plan, is to sign a bunch of guys, whatever. Last year, see what we can do, see if we can fill some guys out, we can fill some roles. Maybe we get some good signings that can be starters first next year. That'll be fine, too cheap. And this year we just spend. And then get there like we did in 2017, and we try and put together a good offense. So it'll probably be the opposite of what happened in 2017. Not as good defense and a very, very good offense. That's what I'm expecting. And there are a lot of good offensive guys out there. But, I mean, I'm going to say this because I think it's a little futile to talk about. Free agency, we can definitely talk a little bit about it for sure, whatever you want to do. But just some of these guys are going to get tagged, it's just a little folly, But, yeah.
Are there any positions specifically you're looking for that you wanted to address?
Yeah, wide receiver, either in the draft or free agency. Tackle, either in the draft or free agency. So I'm thinking Terran Armstead or maybe a reunion with Allen Robinson. I've heard Chandler Jones' name be brought up and J.C. Jackson, but I don't know if we need to sign another big corner. Really, I think we can draft one in the second. Or maybe in the third. We have 2 third-round picks too. I think we need an edge, but I'm looking more at Harold Landry more than anything else because I think he'll be a pretty good value. So yeah, there's or even Jadeveon Clowney, but he's probably going to get another 1-year deal. He seems like he's getting 1-year deal after 1-year deal to contenders. He might even get tagged too. I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at for him. Oh, I love Carlton Davis, man. I would do a lot for Carlton Davis, man. He is. Yeah. Oh, I love him so much. he's the best quarterback on that team. But yeah, there's a lot. Look, they have I think the second most cap space, I want to say.
Yeah, you got 56 million or something. So you got a decent chunk.
Is it only? I thought it was more than that. But yeah, no, we have a lot for sure. We definitely have a lot. But yeah, it's a lot of signals I think are going to be said if we tag Cam again, because I think that seems like it might be our only franchise tag option. Because I looked at the franchise for wide receivers in case you want to tag Chark, because we can't give him a big deal. We just can't. He's too small of a frame. He's been injured too much for him to give a long-term deal. As much as I do like him as a receiver a lot, and the tag for him is $19 million, and we're not paying that for him. We'll just sign Allen Robinson for $18 million a year or something So, but yeah, it's really just edge because I think that it's pretty obvious that Chason is a bust. He's going to be a bust. He'll be I think you need 3 edge guys in the modern NFL to really have a good defense. You know what I mean? They don't have to be highly paid. You don't need 3 first-round picks or anything like that. But I think you need 3 good edge rushers to be good. I don't think you can crack it with 2 anymore. So signing Harold Landry would be great, and maybe let Chason develop a little bit or something, or maybe he'll work out in the future. So it's edge, anywhere on the offensive line that we can improve. So whether that's tackle or guard, because one of our free agents is Andrew Norwell. And I think Khan is probably done. I think he's on the team still, but I think he's probably done for us. So offensive line and then edge, and then every team needs linebackers. I think we're pretty okay at safety, just because that's like we talked about with Cisco, and Wigard and Rashawn Jenkins. So yeah, I think it's like wide receiver, offensive line, and edge really. So yeah, and that could all be addressed in the draft too. So
Yeah. You mentioned Harold Landry. That's a guy that's also been projected to the Falcons potentially. And while I do love Harold Landry, and he's young too. I think he's only like 25. He's still really young. He was really good for the Titans. And I think there's the connection between Dean Pease, who when he was with the Titans, he's worked with Harold Landry. Maybe he comes in. Y'all could pay him. I don't know how the Falcons be able to do that. But we don't have money. So we not be able to. I think that'd be great for y'all. And then, in terms of receivers, there's a lot of receivers out in free agency right now. Now, again, like you mentioned, the franchise tag, I think I saw Chris Godwin's probably going to get the franchise tag. I'd like to see with what money the Buccaneers are going to do that with. But I'm sure they'll find a way. But, there's a lot of, I think, value that y'all are going to have a chance to get. And y'all's situation is a lot different than ours because we are $7 million over the cap. And so I was talking with the Bears about okay, there's these moves basically that the Falcons could do to end up with about $30 million in cap space, which is fine for the most part. To maybe make some mid-level signings, maybe get another Cordell Patterson signing or a few. I need my cat to stop. But yeah, and I think there's other guys offensive line wise that I think would be interesting, like James Daniels from the Bears. He's a pretty good guard. I've seen him mock to a couple plays. I think I've seen with the Jags. Ben Jones, I believe, is available. He's a center. Coming to the Titans. I think he'd be pretty good. And you mentioned Teron Armstead.
Still has another year, but he's been injured every year, so I get that. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And then you mentioned Teron Armstead, who he's probably going to be one of the most coveted on the market. I think the Jags are probably one of the few ones that could probably pay him what he's probably going to be wanting. So
the only thing I think with Armstead though is that honestly we could there are 3 good tackles that we could just take number 1. You know what I mean? I don't think we need to spend it on Armstead when we could get you know what I mean? But go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a great transition to the next thing I wanted to talk about. 2022 draft. So obviously y'all have the first overall pick, and there's a lot of talk about what direction y'all would want to go in, and I have been adamant since probably December, whenever it was kind of okay, it's basically going to be the Lions or the Jags. And I was like, if it's the Jags, I'm going Evan Neal number 1. And this was before all the mock drafts were doing it, so I wish I got to find my episode where I said that and be okay, I was the first one to say this. But I was because yes, Aiden Hutchinson is great. Yes, Kayvon Thibodeau is going to be great. But like you said, I think they have some good defensive players. And while I think they could have improved with the edge rush, I feel like getting a big offensive lineman right now, in consideration with the fact that money-wise, I think there's a lot of edge rushers on this market. And instead of where you won't have to pay a bunch of money to be able to get it, when you have such good offensive tackles at the top, I felt like Evan Neal would be a perfect fit. Now, of course, I don't know what they're going to do with Cam Robinson, but still, I think Evan Neal is going to be better than Cam Robinson.
Yes.
So at least with the first overall pick, what are your thoughts? What do you think they will do? What have you heard, and what do you think you would want them to do?
Yeah, let's just take it one by one for sure. What do I think they will do is, I guess the first one will tackle. I think, like you mentioned or whatever, I think the signal is if they're going to take a tackle is if Cam Robinson walks, if they let him walk. I think if that happens, we're probably going to draft a tackle in the draft unless we get Teron Armstead. But I'm not sure that we're going to go after him. I know I've seen a lot of people there. We got a lot of cap space. We would need a tackle, but I would be pretty comfortable if the Jaguars kept Robinson. We have Jawan Taylor, who was kind of a disappointment, but it's his 3rd year now. He fell in that draft in the 2nd round where he was supposed to be a 1st-round pick. Or I'm sorry, it's going to be his 4th year. I don't think he's as bad as Jaguars fans think he is. And I like we talked about Walker Little. So there's 3 tackles there already if they were to keep Cam Robinson that are nowhere near Teron Armstead, nowhere near Evan Neal, from my understanding, but not bad players. And we talked about the Travis Etienne pick. I don't want to be drafting luxury picks, a position where we already have semi strengths. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So I think that's going to be the tell. Because if we don't do that, then I think we're going to go the top 2 edge guys. Unless we and if we let Cam go, I think it's way more likely that we draft a tackle or something like that. So, so that was the first one. Does that make sense? What do you want to say about that?
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I think, I don't know how you mentioned you haven't gone too far in tips, but it seems like most people are kind of picking between either Evan Neal or Akeem Ekwonu as the top tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And while I got Evan Neal, I understand. I mean, Akeem Ekwonu is one of those things like, if Evan Neal is the first overall pick, Ekwonu is probably going to be like the 4th. So it's like it's kind of like, I don't remember what
get
draft
past the Giants. Yeah, I don't think he'll get past.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
So
but and I don't remember what draft it was. I want to say it was 2013. I think Eric Fisher went number 1.
Yeah, Joe
and it was
that.
Yeah, and it was just that draft where it was like 2 quarterbacks were taken. It was in like the 20s, and then you just had defensive players and tackles racking up in the top of the draft. I feel like that's going to be this year. I mean, I just don't have many high. I'm not going to say high hopes, but I don't think this quarterback class is so great that you're going to see like 3 quarterbacks taken in the top 10 or anything. I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think there's a lot of good and I mean, that's only the first 2. You've still got, Charles Cross from Mississippi State. I think he's going to be a really good tackle. And there's just so many good there. And then, of course, edge rusher. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau. You got Jermaine Johnson, Trayvon Walker, even though some people predicted probably going to go on the inside. Ajabo from Michigan. There's just so many good ones there.
You didn't even mention the guy to Purdue. Come on, what about George Karlaftis or whatever?
George Karlaftis, yes. I
love him.
I do too. I think his run defense is awful. I'd like to see some improvement there.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I kind of worry with George Karlaftis. I think because he's not really good as a run fitter, I think he's probably going to be more top 15, not top 10. To me. So now as a pass rusher, he's great, and his build is. I think he's bigger than Aiden Hutchinson. Like that dude's a monster in terms of his size. But like if you run against him, he can't do anything. So I'd like to see them.
I feel like he should be able to work on that. But yeah, no, sorry.
He should. I mean, if you put him, and of course that's with any defensive end. You come in, they're going to need some NFL work. But yeah, I do like George Karlaftis too. I think he was in my defensive rankings. He was like 3 or 4. So I love him too. And there's just so many of them. It's such a deep class at offensive line and edge, which I think are things that the Jags need and the Falcons need too. So I can respect it. I think there's going to be a lot of options there.
Yeah, no, for sure. All right, the next one I think was, what do I want them to do? Is that right? Or what do I? What was it? Sorry. Okay, what do I want them to do? I have 3 guys that I want them to take. It's Evan Neal, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Aiden Hutchinson. So any of those 3 guys, they'd be happy, and I think that's where everything has been mocked that I've seen as well. I think that was one of the questions too, but we can just do those together. I think those are the only guys I've seen mocked. I don't think we're gonna take Hamilton. I don't think we're gonna take Stingley. I don't think. The guy to NC State, Kwamwu, I don't think he's going there. I've seen it a few times. I've seen him ranked. I saw The Athletic, I think, had him as their number 1 ranked tackle. But I'm not passing up on a guy who's as athletic as Evan Neal is at 340. I'm not. He's like, what, 6'7", 340 or something like that. He weighed in at the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I haven't really dove into his film as much as I need to, for sure, because I've watched like maybe one full like film game. But yeah, if we're going tackle, I want him. I want him. I think especially he'll be good for the Doug Peterson zone run game that I think they should run probably. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's something that he ran a lot at Alabama. And like, I mean, I think he weighed in 6'7", 336, and like they showed a picture.
God,
they showed and it's just like he doesn't even look fat. It's like it looks all built in. I'm like, how is that 336? Like,
he looks like a basketball player. It's crazy.
He does. Yeah. He looks like he could go play power forward in the NBA right now.
Yep.
So he's a beast. And I mean, I'm an Alabama fan, so I'm a little bit biased. But I did also see him all the time ever since his freshman year. And it was one of those things that he played guard some. I think he played right guard, right tackle, and left tackle. And everywhere he went, he was a mauler. So it's one of those things like you could put him wherever you want to. I think he ends up as left tackle. Now, I'm one of the few that thinks if you put him at right tackle, I think he's an all-pro year 1. I truly think that he's that good. But I do think they're probably going to put him at left tackle because to me, he has all-pro potential at left tackle. I think wherever you put him, he's going to be fantastic. So I just think he'd be a great fit for y'all's offensive line. I think Doug Peterson would love to have him. And he's a guy that even at 6'7", 336, his ability to do zones and move across the line of scrimmage at such speed is terrifying. It's like a bigger Derrick Henry running dead at you. It's scary. So I think he'd be fantastic for y'all.
So I want him, and the only thing though is that like I just feel like adding another rusher might just be better for the construction that we have. Like I mentioned, we already have who I think are 3 technically, or if we sign someone in the offseason, we'd have like maybe 3 if we let Cam go already at the tackle position that I like. So it's kind of, and I don't like Chase on at all, like I mentioned before. And if we can get Josh Allen and fucking Thibodeau, who I actually prefer over Hutchinson.
I did too.
Yeah, I think it's just super impressive that Thibodeau was the #1 guy consensus coming out, and he like missed part of the year with an injury, and he's still in consideration for the #1 pick. That I feel like that doesn't really happen too often, and I haven't dove into the film as much for most of these guys, like I've been saying, but man, I just think that's really impressive. And I also don't like Michigan, so it's like if I could do a tiebreaker, I'd pick Thibodeau, but I'd be happy with any of them, like I said, and I just think it's harder to replace the like talent there. Like I would be happy with Harold Landry, like I said, but I'd be much happier with like Thibodeau or Hutchinson over Landry than I would like Evan Neal over the combination of the 3 tackles that I like still on the team. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so. I like Kayvon Thibodeau more. I think, like you said, I think he has higher upside than Aiden Hutchinson, quite frankly, still. And the fact that I feel like, and this happens every single year with certain prospects, we get like prospect fatigue. And I feel like that's partially happening with Kayvon Thibodeau, especially whenever that like, oh, I don't know about his effort or whatever that came out. I was like, I think it came up with like Justin Fields like late last season. I'm like, look, these are good prospects. I don't know why we're like there's some things that's so obvious that people want to like, oh, I'm going to have this take, which is different just to be different and special. I'm like, no, you're not. You're no smarter than I am. He's obviously a fantastic player. Now, if you want to argue Aiden Hutchinson over Kayvon Thibodeau, I completely get it. But to say that Kayvon Thibodeau is like not easily the second best edge rusher in this class, I think is ridiculous. So if you don't have him top 2, I'd love to know your exact reasoning for that. And I've seen some people drop him to like 8 and have the Falcons take him. I have, as much as I would adore that, I have no reason to believe he's going to be there at 8. So I just think he's way too good. I think he's easily going to go top 4. I can't see him getting outside of that. Now, if he does and he falls to the Falcons, I will snatch him up in a heartbeat. And if the Falcons skip him, I will never forgive Terry Fontenot.
I mean, guys drop every year. Crazy things happen, and I feel like it's go from the wrong. What are they picking again? Where's Atlanta picking?
8.
Yeah, that's definitely possible. So don't get your hopes up completely. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I told before, there's so few areas that the Falcons could go at 8 that I'd be upset with because our roster is so devoid of talent right now. But if I'm looking at the blue chip guys and the guys that I've seen projected at 8, I've seen Kayvon Thibodeau there. I'd take him in a heartbeat. I've seen Kyle Hamilton there, who to me is my #1 player in the class. I know that might be a hot take to some, but it's just a guy at 6'4", 230, I think is what he is. He's got the size of a linebacker and the speed of a safety. And just seeing him diagnose plays at the rate he did at Notre Dame, run fitting, free safety-wise, wherever he was a dynamic playmaker on the field. And it was like his dynamicism reminded me a lot of Isaiah Simmons, but in the sense of Isaiah Simmons, they used him as like edge rusher too, and he didn't have a clear spot. I think Hamilton is clearly a free safety, and he is dynamite. Love Kyle Hamilton. And right now the Falcons need playmakers, so I would love him at that spot. But if you're not taking a blue chip guy, I kind of want the Falcons to trade back if possible. And of course, like everyone's like, oh yeah, just trade back. It's like, well, it takes 2 to tango. Someone else has got to want to move up, which I think there's a good possibility of like Malik Willis being there at 8. And if Malik Willis is as high as some people think in their quarterback room, then I think you could see a team like Washington or maybe the Broncos, or heck, if the Steelers want to take a chance and go up all the way to 8, I think those are possibilities. But yeah, so I think overall, for going back to the Jags themselves, I think they couldn't go wrong with any of the 3 realistically. I could at least hear an argument for Okwonu at 1, if they really think that's the #1 guy. And again, I don't necessarily agree, but I'm not saying Okwonu's bad. So at any rate, I could see any of those 3, and I think no matter who they take, if it's Kayvon, if it's Hutchinson, or if it's Neal, I don't think any of those are the wrong pick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I would, like I said, like I think you pretty much said. I would be just a little disappointed if they didn't take any of those 3 guys. But if they took, someone like Hamilton or whatever, or any of the other like Charles Cross or like I said, the guy at NC State, I can't pronounce his name ever, Iguaku, whatever you said. Sorry.
Ekwonu, yeah.
Yeah, Ekwonu, whatever the fuck. Yeah, I'd be, I'd be. It's a position of need. Theoretically, it would be if they're taking someone, if they're not like tagging Cam or not signing Teron Armstead or someone else. I think it'd be fine. Bolstering offense, I'm never going to be mad at a team loading up at defensive end or offensive line, especially tackle. So I'll just never be mad at that. So yeah.
So continuing on this a little bit, I saw this earlier today, and this wasn't planned originally, but I saw this and I was like, okay, I've got to ask Jesse this.
Let's go.
There was some report came out where there are 3 teams looking to trade up to number 1.
Wow.
And I think one of them was the Lions, which I'm like, if the Lions decide to do this whole like Bears 49ers thing that happened several years ago and take it, because it's from Malik Willis apparently. Mm-hmm. Moving up from Malik Willis, I think it's them, the Giants, and like one other team could potentially trade up to number 1. So what are your thoughts on would you be willing to trade back if it meant, let's say it was the Giants and you traded back to 5? Would you be willing to basically part away with the number 1 pick and potentially part away with Kayvon Thibodeau, Hutchinson, and Neal for what you'd probably get a king's ransom for?
Yeah, no doubt, 1,000%. I just don't think this draft is as tradable as other ones for sure. And I understand. I think there have been some reports, especially about Malik Willis too, because I think it could be Lamar Jackson. That's definitely in the realm of possibilities for sure. I think people are really sleeping on the potential of this quarterback class. Not to say they're all going to be good, but I mean, if there's an over/under for like over 3.5 quarterbacks taken in the first round, I think there might be 4 or 5. So I would definitely 1,000%, no question, take a king's ransom for the number 1 pick. I would even take a lot less than that if we just move back a few spots or anything like that. I don't want to move out of like the top 10 at all. So like the Steelers are probably out of it. Or even Carolina wants to trade up and take Malik Willis. You're more than welcome to. Or the Giants want to trade up and take Malik Willis. I'm very, very happy to do that because, like we said, I mean, Ekwonu might be back at 6 for us or 7 or 5 or whatever we trade back to, or we can get Charles Cross there or something like that. Or I would even take George in the top 10. I know you say you didn't like his his run stopping ability, and Chason does have that problem as well. So does Josh Allen. So our edge rushers would not be great at that, but nevertheless, I'll take it, man. I'll definitely take it. The team, we could do a quick turnaround. We could do a Bengals-esque, not a Bengals, because like I've said all the time, Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. He will be a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence will be. I firmly believe that. I'd rather have Joe Burrow over him, 1,000%. But I mean, the Jaguars could make a quick turnaround, and in a division I don't think that's good. We might see. We'll probably see Deshaun Watson will probably never play in the Texans uniform ever again. I think Tennessee is a little bit getting on the older side and a little bit collapsing a little more than people are, I think, maybe realizing, or maybe they are and I'm just wrong. But and then the Colts might lose Carson Wentz. They might get rid of him. They might be in a little bit of a rebuild. I think without Eberflus, the defensive coordinator, that defense will suffer. So it could be a wide open division. So trading back maybe isn't the best thing in the world if we're going for it hard this year, but I still think I would do it because I don't think we're ready for that yet.
Yeah, the AFC South is very interesting going forward because I mean you mentioned the Colts, and it seemed by all reports they're looking to move off of Carson Wentz. Mm-hmm. Which if that's the case, like okay, who's your quarterback? And like they don't have a first round pick. It's not like they have a good shot at being able to take a quarterback in the first round unless they're trading up. So I don't know what they do there. And Tennessee, I said it last offseason, I was like, look, I still think Tennessee wins the division, but this offense, I firmly believe, is going to be worse without Arthur Smith. And I think we saw that. It was just – and now, granted, some of that was injury, but the explosiveness in the passing game was not there at any point in the season. And I know they were winning games. Their defense was doing fairly well. But I was telling people, I was like, look, when it comes to the playoffs, their lack of being able to have an explosive passing game is going to come back to bite them. And it did so immediately because they were thumped in the second round. This doesn't mean necessarily hating on Ryan Tannehill. I've never exactly been the biggest Ryan Tannehill fan, but I just think that offense is taking a step back and looking forward. I mean, I think there's been some talks about looking at a successor for Ryan Tannehill. I don't know how much longer he's going to be there. And then you got the Texans, who, I mean, they're still a dumpster fire. I don't know what they're going to do. And they've still got the whole Deshaun Watson thing they got to figure out. So, yeah, I mean, I think in terms of going forward as a young team, I think the Jags have a chance to be able to steal one. If the AFC South ends up being like what some are projecting the NFC South to be, where, a team could be 9-8 and win the division, then, yeah, I think the Jags have a shot. And also, I'll say, you mentioned like Joe Burrow. I was very famous originally when he got drafted that I was super cautious on him. And part of that was because he had one good year. And I'm always very reluctant to call someone like the best prospect since whoever when they only have one good year.
I get that. I totally get that. I do.
And even now, I love the story. I loved what they did. And I think Joe Burrow is one of the most likable guys in the NFL, especially after what happened this season. I loved the story, and while I did see and think the Rams were going to win in the end, I still was like, I don't want the Bengals to lose. This is just a great story. I don't – some people are saying, Joe Burrow is a top 10 quarterback right now. I don't believe that. I think he's close, and if you wanted to say he's 10, maybe. But I've seen some people say, oh, yeah, he's right below, or even some people saying above Patrick Mahomes, which I think is just ridiculous. I don't think he's there yet. I need to see him doing more. And there were a lot of times in the playoffs that his either coaching questionables happened, and I mean that specifically with Kansas City and their decision-making in that game, and also their defense bailed out the times where Joe Burrow could not complete a first down. So I don't think he was as fantastic as people say he is. No, that's not to say I dislike Joe Burrow. Love him. Fantastic. I think he's got a bunch of swag. It was awesome to see what he did this season. And I think he's going to be really, really, really good. But if we go back or go forward 10 years, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Trevor Lawrence is better than him. And that's kind of where I would kind of project it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's an unreasonable take at all. I just I'm on the opposite side.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's always hard too, projecting this far in advance. And we never know, Joe Burrow, if they don't get him an offensive line, I feel like he's going to die. It's just
they did draft, I like Jonah, what is it, Jackson? Is it Jonah Jackson? What's the guy out of Clemson? Jackson, right?
They got Jonah Jackson. I think that's at Ohio State. But Jonah Jackson, the guard, is that what you're talking about? The guard?
Maybe I think was it Jackson Carmine or something? They drafted a tackle out of Clemson. I'm 99% sure. Okay. But yeah, they've done stuff to kind of address the offensive line as best. I think maybe they didn't draft them. Maybe I'm just totally wrong. But I know it was bad. I know it was. But Jackson Carmine is what I was thinking of. He's a guard out of Clemson.
Okay. Yeah, I think, and maybe they've done a little bit. It's just I think he was the most
I understand, though.
pressured quarterback.
We saw it in the playoffs. We saw it. Yeah, we definitely did. But I think they've drafted stuff where hopefully they get there. You know what I mean? But that's about it. Yeah.
And frankly, it's given where they're going to be, which I think they have the 31st pick in the first round. Given that spot, they might be just okay, we're picking the top offensive lineman on the board and we don't care who it is.
Sure.
When you're that far back, I think you have that luxury. And I've mentioned to a lot of people, I think the Bengals are such a young team right now. Don't think they're just going to go away. Now, granted, I do think to a degree that this was man, the stars aligned. And it did. It did. So I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to make the Super Bowl again. But if I'm thinking they could be a wild card team next year. Now, I have the Ravens winning the division. I still think at healthy, the Ravens are the best team in that division.
I agree.
But I think the Bengals are a wild card team. I think they could be a 10-win team next season. And I think that's fine. I think they are going to be competitive going forward because they have such a young team and they still got a ton of cap space, which is something that you want to see. And when you've got a rookie guy, maybe they try to splurge a little bit. So I'm just saying they're not going to go away. Some people are saying, oh, well, this is it for them. I don't necessarily agree. I think they could get back there in the next 3 or 4 years. And I think they're going to be competitive. Mm-hmm. So, but to help with that, they've got to protect Joe Burrow or else he's literally just, I don't know what's going to happen if he keeps getting hit like that. I think he handled it as best as possible, and he showed some fantastic mobility getting out of sacks at times because he should have been sacked even more than he was. But I want, for his own well-being, I hope that he do something.
Yeah, as much as I don't want to admit it, another young team with another young quarterback that I think they have a lot of cap space that can make another move and make a playoff push is the Chargers too. They have a lot of similarities, except I think the Chargers have a better offensive line for sure, and they could have a better defense theoretically. But the Bengals defense was perennially underrated all year, and they were good in the playoffs. They were good there. They need to keep Jesse Bates, but a few of the guys are getting a little older. Like Von Bell's getting a little old right now. Some of the cornerbacks, they need to get rid of Eli Apple, obviously, but Mike Hilton, I don't think he's super old actually. He's 28, so he was an off-season signing. I don't know. There's a few things I think can improve. Logan Wilson was good. But and I love Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard together. And they drafted Justin Tsai, who was hurt the entire year, who was a second-round pick, I want to say. And I was pretty high on him, too, as a pass rusher. He was a third-round pick. So, I think they've got a young team. The offense isn't going away anytime soon. So, that's really what matters. And it's an NFL team. 7 teams make the playoffs. 10-7 will probably get you there. I think they're definitely the playoffs for the next few years, for sure.
Yeah, the only thing that happened this offseason that I was really questionable over is them letting Carl Lawson go and getting Trey Hendrickson. I was kind of like, it felt like, well, I don't know what you gained out of that, but he was fantastic. So obviously it worked out, but I was just like, I felt like that was kind of a even turn. I think they made similar money. I think both guys got like around 4 years, $60 million or something like that. So it was like, I don't know how much you really gained out of that, but it worked out. And I think over the past 2 or 3 years, we've seen the Bengals spend money in free agency, and they've gotten a lot of veterans, and specifically on defense, and it seemed to work, which I think is a good way to go. Build around your defense and get your young guy in there, and preferably with a better offensive line. But it seemed to work. Obviously, they were able to make it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, Look, I was reading a PFF article that was like, the Jaguars are like if a team was going to be a Bengals stuff, do a Bengals whatever, it's going to be the Jags. So but it's very unlikely to happen. Very, very unlikely. I wouldn't put any money on it. I wouldn't think about it at all. Probably take the Jags over win total depending on where it is. But yeah, they would be the only team that could ever do it because this doesn't happen. This is once in a blue moon type thing.
Yeah. So I guess that's a great lead-in point. What are your expectations then for the 2022 season?
Well, a lot of stuff has to. I guess I just said, I probably will take the over on the win total. I think people are still sleeping on the Jaguars, even as the roster is, and with all the cap space and the draft capital they have. I feel like it'd be really hard to fuck this up. But if someone is going to, it's going to be the Jaguars, I guess. I don't expect them to win the division. I wouldn't be surprised if they win the division. Wouldn't be surprised if they make the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised if they miss the playoffs. I feel like the win total I want to see what they do. I really need to see them spend in free agency. I really, really do. And if they do, I'm expecting them to, I expect 7 wins, if not more. I'm thinking 7 and 10, depending on how much I like the free agent class and how much I like the draft class. If I like it, I think maybe 9 and 8 isn't within the cards. If I hate it, 5 and 11 is probably in the cards. So.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, and again, like you said, there's a lot to happen. Free agency hasn't even started yet. Mm-hmm. But I think that they're right now at least the 3rd best team in the AFC South. I think they're better than the Texans. I'm taking them over the Texans.
They are.
And then when you look at what the other 2 teams could do this offseason, what happens with Carson Wentz, there's a solid, very, very solid chance that at the end of this offseason, depending on what they decide to do, Trevor Lawrence is probably the 2nd best quarterback in that division. If Carson Wentz, goes away, and I don't know what they would do at the quarterback position, but yeah, I think they have a very solid shot. And this is one of those things I'll have to bring you back on near the summer after everything's kind of gone by with the draft and everything, and kind of see how your feelings may change. But I definitely think it would be very surprising if they're picking in the top 3 next season to me. They've got back-to-back first round or number 1 overall picks, and I think they just got too much talent for that. I think they're now going to have better coaching. I think Doug Peterson is miles better than Urban Meyer, and he hasn't even really done anything with him yet. So I think that they've got a solid shot. I'd probably put them right now probably around 5 wins. I think it's possible, and that's just kind of where they are now. If they're able to get some big-time guys, I think that does add a couple wins. And I think if things align the right way, if the offense is going, if the defense is improved, pass rush improved, if the secondary works very well, then I think they could end up winning the division. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think the Jags are going to have a renaissance and win 12, 13 games, but I think 10 wins very on the table for the Jags if things go right. So I'm looking forward to it. The Jags are one of those teams that it's like, it was exciting several years ago when I think we started this talk about 2017 when they were good, and like I think in the next few years we could see that happen again, and it's exciting. They're one of those young teams that I think they've got a lot going for them.
Yeah, I think definitely. I am excited for the future for the first time since 2018, I guess. So I'm definitely excited. I mean, it's hard to not be excited when you have a blue chip quarterback, prospect, So that's kind of just where I'm at for that kind of thing. You have to be excited. The Jaguars haven't had this good of a quarterback prodigy since Bortles, and he was a reach. I mean, at 3 anyway. So I mean, there's never been a blue chip guy the Jaguars have had at quarterback. I mean, Mark Brunell's the best quarterback in Jaguars history. And he's a very good quarterback. I think he won comeback of the player of the year one time, because Chad Pennington won that twice. I think he's the only player to do that. It's just very exciting. I'm wearing my Lawrence jersey. I bought it as soon as he got it. I'm not a big jersey guy, but it's just hard to not be excited. Even if it was just Lawrence and like a few good receivers, I'd be very excited. You know what I mean? Like if the Jaguars were to trade back and then like draft a receiver in the top 10, as long as it's not like 2, 3, 4, 5, or maybe even 6, I would be pretty happy even with that,
Yeah, and that hope is almost the exact opposite that I have because we have no money, we have an aging quarterback.
Yeah.
And this is it's not me hating Matt Ryan. It's the fact he's going to be 37 in May.
This is a good year, though, for Atlanta. Sorry to interrupt you. This is a good year for Atlanta to draft a quarterback in this class, just because one of these guys have to develop. And if they want, I know they probably won't take him high. If the guy falls in the second round, I think it'll be really, really good for Atlanta to take a quarterback. Honestly, sorry to interrupt you, but yeah.
Oh no, you're fine. No, yeah. I am. That's kind of where I am, and I've warmed up to it because I still think Matt Ryan's got some good in him. I think if he does not have legitimately the worst offensive line in football in front of him, then I think that he could do some good things. Now, there's been a lot of talk about, and it seems this happened after the initial wave, and I think it's through the combine a little bit, the Falcons seem to love Desmond Ridder. And
interesting.
I'm not the biggest
I think he
Desmond Ridder fan.
Ran a nice 40. Sorry, yeah.
I haven't read about the quarterback's 40. I've been seeing, which I will say, and again, 40 is very much overrated, but the wide receivers are flying this year. I mean, there's so many 4.3s. Yeah. I'm like, good Lord, what do y'all eat? They're flying. But yeah, Desmond Ridder, a lot of people have been comping him to Ryan Tannehill. And, again, not the biggest Ryan Tannehill fan. I think that's a pretty decent comp in terms of size and mobility, and we saw what Arthur Smith could do with Ryan Tannehill. I mean, Ryan Tannehill was very good in Arthur Smith's offense, so he's a guy that I definitely think can end up in the second round, and I wouldn't necessarily be against if, let's say, there's a team that wants to trade back and gain more picks, aka the Lions at 32, given the fact the Falcons have 2 second-round picks, do they use one of those to move up and take that quarterback so they can get that fifth-year option? I think that's very possible.
That is also a really, really good point, too, especially in the first round. Yeah, you got to get that for a quarterback, that fifth-year option, which is why I also think 5 quarterbacks really taken in the first round, or 4 at least. So, yeah, I agree with that a lot. It's a good point.
Yeah, and it's been so weird to see to me, I definitely think Pickett and Willis are going in the first round. I'm super confident in that. And then you get into things that's a little bit more interesting. You've got Sam Howell, you got Matt Corral, and you got Desmond Ridder and Charlie Strong, which I think are basically the next 4, whatever order you want to put them in. And I like Matt Corral a lot. I actually really like Charlie Strong too. I know he didn't have the best Senior Bowl, but his makeup, and while he is a pure pocket passer, his arm strength is the best in the quarterback class to me. He fires rockets. So I think that's something unteachable. And then you got Sam Howell, who I think has a lot of untapped upside. Now, he also has a degree of Mitchell Trubisky to me that scares me. And that's why I wouldn't take a top 10 pick on him. And then, of course, you got Desmond Ridder. Those are all guys that if you think they fit in your team, then I could see it happening. But there are also 4 guys that if they all drop to the second round, it wouldn't shock me at all. It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. And we obviously won't know. We've got a little bit over a month until the draft, which still feels so far away. But it's going to be interesting because there's a lot of teams I think Washington is destined to take a quarterback. I'd be almost shocked if they didn't at this point, unless they get one in free agency, which I just don't really see happening. But then you got the Panthers at I think it's either 6 or 7.
They're 6.
Where I've
6.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I've seen like, to me, it's either they take Kenny or they either take Pickett or they take a tackle. It's one of those two. Like I'd be shocked if it was anything else, unless Kayvon Thibodeau somehow fell and they're like, okay, we're gonna take him. But it seems to be either quarterback or tackle. And then of course the Steelers. Everyone's talking about how much the Steelers are in love with Willis. Do they decide to trade up? After that, it's like I just don't know. So this quarterback class is interesting. I don't hate the class. I think it's not as good as previous years, but I think that there are a lot of guys that have to sit. I don't really feel great about any of them starting day one. But if this could be a class that, well, I won't say none of them. I think 2 of them could. But I would say Kenny Pickett, I think, could start day one.
He's the only one, I think, that should. Yeah.
And I think maybe Willis. Maybe.
It's possible. Depending on the offense. It's got to be the right fit, though.
Definitely. And I think it's one of those things, like, if he's not starting necessarily day one, just because of who he is, he could start like week 4 or something. It depends on what the team is. But yeah, I think Kenny Pickett's probably the only one that I would be putting money on starting day one, especially if he's like with Washington. I have to get used to their new name, the Commanders, but I'm just not used to it yet. But yeah, I could see that working out. But yeah, it's just interesting, and this is just one of those classes that I think, we're going to see a lot of tackles taken. We're going to see a lot of edges taken. We're going to see a lot of corners taken. I mean, we didn't really even talk about the corners. A lot of wide receivers. I mean, and I don't remember who I was talking to, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, but I've never seen a position group in general in terms of this draft where there is no clear number one in multiple spots. Like, it feels like if you go to corner, wide receiver, tackle, edge, quarterback, any of those, it's so hard for me to see, like, everyone's like, oh yeah, this is the number one prospect here. It's so wide ranging, especially at receiver. I mean, I've seen so many people like, oh yeah, this is my wide receiver. I've seen everything from Wilson to Burks to, some people still say Jameis Williams despite the injury. I've seen a lot of people saying London now as their number one.
The big one I'm seeing is London right now, currently. But
And I mean, I love some London too. I think I had him at 2 or 3 during mine. I think it's a little, a lot of people were saying like he's 6'5". I think he's like 6'3" at the combine, which drops him quite a bit. I think he was like 6'3", 6'8" or something. But I'm just like, that's why I never trust college numbers when it comes to heights and weights. They never tell the full story. But yeah, I'm excited for this, and I'm a draft guy. I love drafts and everything. But I'm excited this year. I'm excited for just the chaos that we could see, just because no one knows because last year it was like, okay, it's gonna be quarterback, and then the Falcons. Well, this year the top 5 could be anything. I have no idea what it is, which makes it more exciting to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I agree. I think it is more exciting when we get this. And I think you mentioned before the 2013 draft. I think this is very similar in that way. Although it's going to be very different quarterbacks. I don't think EJ Manuel is going to be any of these guys who were taken first.
Oh yeah,
so.
No.
Yeah. I know you're not saying because I think that's been a really lazy comparison that a lot of people have been doing, where it's just kind of like it's 2013 all over again. It's going to be fucking quarterback terrible class, and there'll be a lot of busts because they're just taking defensive talent who aren't that good. It's like, nah, dude. I think it's different. But I think this draft is a little top heavy, but then it's super deep. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, because I know those are kind of different, but like we talked about the 3 guys that I really like, and maybe even 4 or 5 that are really good. If you include Stingley, who people like, and also Hamilton, and also then Ekwamu, the guy at NC State. But then we talked about wide receiver, cornerback. I love Sauce Gardner, man. He might be my number 1 guy. He's really,
my number 1 now.
Yeah,
he's my number 1 now. It was Stingley until I saw that Stingley was gonna have another surgery, and at this point it's like, okay, because for a while I was like number 8. For the Falcons, if they get Stingley, I'd be super stoked to put him with AJ Terrell. But now I'm like, okay, I'm out on it. If you trade back, sure. It's just he's too risky to me at this point. But to me, he's got the upside to be the best corner in this class. I love both of them. But I saw someone, I don't know if you saw it, but someone posted like their top 25 first round grades on prospects, and I was looking at it, I was like, okay, I see something. And they had 2 running backs in their top 25 prospects, which I was like, okay, that's feisty. but they didn't have Sauce Gardner in their top 25. I was floored. I was like, not only do you not have a first-round grade on Gardner, but you have 2 running backs ahead of him. And then I asked, and they were like, yeah, I have some question marks. And I'm like, okay. Like, I mean, sure. That's.
I want to know, you know?
Yeah, seriously. Like, I mean, the dude never gave up a touchdown in college, and this past season he gave up like 8 catches for like 60 yards or something an entire season. Like, I don't know what more he needs to show you, but
yeah,
you know,
I agree. I agree totally. Yeah, it's gonna be a really interesting draft. I usually bet like a decent amount on the draft, and this year I think I'm gonna be off a lot of stuff because it is just I have no idea what's gonna happen. I have no idea at all. Which is fun because I love the draft, like you said. I mean, you know, being a Jags fan, being a Falcons fan, I assume it's just the offseason is a lot more fun for us normally, you know.
Yeah, when it gets to the draft, because I can't remember the last time the Falcons like spent a lot of money. So yeah, it had cap exactly. Right. So it feels like we haven't really done much. But even so, like when you're a bad team and you just know you're a bad team, you're looking for anything to give you some hope. And it's really free agency. And even if you get like this bargain bin type of guy, which the Falcons are going to have to do, I'm of course going to find a way to excite me, even though I know he's going to be awful. So it's just, you know, and it's one of those things that until the Falcons get super competitive again, I'm just going to have to be looking forward to the offseason, which, you know, it's everyone's on an equal slate. You have a chance to be able to improve. So that's kind of the way I see it.
No, I get that. I mean, you know, like you said before, whatever, the division for both of us are wide open. So it'll be at least fun to like maybe imagine just being, you know what I mean? There. So that's how I feel at least. But yeah.
All right. Well, that's all that I've got, Jesse. It's been great. We've been recording for over an hour, which kind of crazy that it doesn't feel like this long. But hey, great stuff as always. So for those that have not been able to meet you before, please plug all your stuff.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Bacon Games Jesse. My podcast is the Bacon Games Sports Podcast. I stream on Twitch, which I'm doing now. It's Twitch, twitch.tv/ESSEJ, which is Jesse backwards, the Slayer. I do TikTok stuff or whatever. I'm all over the place. Just find me at Bacon Games Jesse. You'll find me pretty much everywhere. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of JJ Talks. Please go follow Jesse. Check out some of his stuff. He's great. I've been on there a few times, so you might be able to find that as well. But thank you. And until next time, stay safe.